Hi, welcome to Chapter Book Storytime. I'm Ellen from EVPL Oakland Branch Library, and on today's edition of the Variety Pack, I've got an action-packed novel with lots of adventure that I'm sure you'll like. I know I had a hard time putting it down. It's called Wild Wave by Rodman Philbrick. It's a great story. Philbrick has been writing children's novels for many years. Probably his best known is Freak the Mighty. But I really like this one. Philbrick wastes no time getting into the action, and so you find out what happens right away, and it just grabs your attention, and you want to know how they're going to survive. This is a story of Jess and Nick, who find themselves caught in a tsunami. Wild Wave. The author starts out with a little bit of explanation about what a tsunami really is. A tsunami, sometimes called a tidal wave, is a long, high wave caused by an earthquake or underwater landslide. In deep sea waters, the wave impulses may hit speeds of over 500 miles an hour. As the wave impulses reach the shoreline, the speed slows down and the water rises up, sometimes to more than 100 feet above normal sea level. Damage can include devastation so severe that the landscape is unrecognizable. Forests and cities may be swept away and the land itself removed. For those in the path of an approaching tsunami, there is only one chance to survive: run for high ground. Day 1. Cape Courage, New Jersey. Chapter 1. Get this title. The Screaming Begins. Doesn't that grab your attention? It did for me. It all depends on where you were when the world ended. Not planet Earth, of course. My little world. The beach, the bay, my school, my friends, my family, vanished. Wiped out. Changed forever. None of us saw it coming, not until the last possible second. And by then, it was too late. The survivors all have their own stories. Mine starts like this. A Saturday morning in June, 2 weeks before school gets out, I'm checking out an animal rescue place called Friends of the Wild. The sanctuary is spread out over a green hillside overlooking the bay. In my opinion, a fantastic location because you can see most of Cape Courage. The boat-crowded bay, the waterfront hotels, the marinas and restaurants that make this a busy tourist destination. A mile or so behind us at the top of the hill is the Pinewood Forest, a nature preserve of tall pines and hiking trails. My name is Nick Chase. I'm the dorky kid with the backpack and the glasses strapped to my head, totally clueless that my life is about to be torn apart. The volunteer showing a group of us around the facility is Jess Hardy. She goes to my school, but we don't really know each other. When I see her in the hall, she always looks real serious and unapproachable, but at Friends of the Wild, she's all smiles, like she really enjoys volunteering. Phones are allowed, so I'm videoing the tour as we go. We take in injured animals, she explains, not pets, but just about everything else. Today, our guests include turtles, bald eagles, hawks, deer, fox, and in this cage here, bobcats, sometimes called wildcats. I can't see any, complains a little kid. His mother shushes him. Bobcats are hard to spot, Jess says kindly. They're really good at blending in. The cage area is full of foliage so they can hide, which they like to do. Look for their bobbed tails and their orange tracking collars. The collars mark them as sanctuary guests. See, there. Kitty, screams the kid. Not a house cat, Jess explains. The bobcat is bigger, 20 to 40 pounds, and it doesn't do well with humans. It's a predator, hunting small animals, preferably rabbits and squirrels, and the occasional rattlesnake. But it will also attack house cats and small dogs. A cat that eats dogs? Says the little kid. Jess shrugs. Sometimes. To be honest, I'm here for a class assignment. My homeroom teacher, Mrs. Bowditch, wants us to make a short podcast about something in our area. Something interesting, obviously. I chose the wildlife reserve from a list of suggestions. Not that I've ever done an actual podcast. The thought of recording my scratchy, two-tone voice is a joke, if you've ever heard me trying to get through a sentence without my voice cracking. My idea? I record other people talking about the sanctuary, namely Jess, and hope the recording explains itself with no help from me. Maybe if I do a good job with this project, my teacher won't think I'm unfocused and performing below expectations in everything but reading. Or maybe not. Best way to spot a bobcat is to crouch down and hold very still, Jess demonstrates, crouching a few yards from the big cage. Look into the foliage. Bobcats are super good at remaining motionless, but if you look carefully, you'll see their eyes. Glowing yellow eyes. Holding his mother's hand, the little boy crouches beside Jess. "Where is Kitty?" he asks. The answer to that shocks us all. Bang! Out of nowhere, a bobcat launches itself at the chain link, holding on with long, sharp claws midway up the fence. Its yellow eyes look angry, or maybe frightened. It seems to be staring at me as if demanding answers. The big cat hisses, showing razor-sharp teeth. Weird, Jess says thoughtfully. That's never happened before. Bang! Bang! 2 more bobcats cling to the chain link, hissing and moaning. The little boy starts wailing. His mother scoops him up and leaves quickly. Jess backs carefully away from the cage, indicating that visitors do the same. Something is wrong, she warns. Very, very wrong. That's when the screaming begins. Shrieking and hissing, the cats join voices announcing their common fear. Fear of what? I have no idea. The screaming gets louder and louder until it hurts. I cover my ears, but that doesn't help. Chapter 2, The Glistening Mud. Something is happening, Jess shouts. Something bad. Yes, but what? The answer comes a heartbeat later, when the ground starts rocking and rolling. One moment everything is solid, and the next it might as well be jello wobbling under my feet. I fall to my knees and try not to hurl. The motion is like the time I got sick on a roller coaster. Our family doctor says I'd grow out of it, but that hasn't happened yet. Doesn't matter if I puke or not. The whole world is turning inside out. The ground is heaving. Trees sway violently. Shrieking wildcats are stuck to the inside of the fence like fear-crazed refrigerator magnets. Like me, Jess is on her knees, a wild look in her eye. Earthquake. I get why it's called that now. Because the ground is quaking. A strange rumbling noise gets louder as the quaking becomes more intense. People are screaming and crawling away, heading for the parking lot. Little kids wail for their mothers. Trees crash to the ground. The chain link enclosure sways back and forth, then collapses completely. The bobcats explode from their ruined enclosure and vanish into the trembling forest, leaving me even more shaken. Tree limbs sway as if fighting an invisible wind. I've never been so afraid. It stops suddenly as it started. The ground ceases heaving. Trees stop shaking violently and slowly return to something like normal. My first thought is, it could have been worse. The next thought is about my parents. Mom went shopping when she dropped me off. Dad is likely on his boat. I check my phone wanting to call them, make sure they're okay, but there's no service. No surprise, the earthquake was strong enough to topple cell towers, that's for sure. Jess Hardy taps me on the arm. You okay? I'm fine. I put my phone away. I was going to ask to use your phone. Mine is in my locker. There's no signal, I explain. Maybe there'll be some sort of emergency coverage later. Sorry about your bobcats. Will they come back? Not on their own, Jess looks deeply worried. Have heart traps might help once they get hungry. Some of the cats are physically injured and would not be able to hunt and feed. I happen to glance over her shoulder toward the bay where my dad has been living on his charter boat. What I see just about stops my heart. The water is gone. The entire bay, miles of it, has suddenly emptied. Mud glistens where the water is supposed to be. Grounded boats lie on their sides, beached like small whales. Oh no! Jess flinches when her gaze follows mine. She stares at the empty bay, terrified. Please, no! Run, I scream! Run! Isn't this great how fast we jump into the action? A lot of times when I read these novels, there's a lot of exposition, which means a lot of explanation about the character, his life, the world he lives in, before we get started with the action. But Philbrick just jumps right into the tsunami, and I really think it's very, very effective. We'll find out a lot more about Nick and Jess as the story goes on. But right now, it's all about the tsunami. Chapter 3, Into the Pine Woods. We run like the wind, hearts in our mouths, terrified of what comes next. Running all out, powered by fear. Panting and gasping, we make it to the top of a low hill on the edge of the pine woods, a mile or so from the bay. I'm totally out of breath, bending over with my hands and knees. "Here it comes!" Jess shouts. I look up. The sea is flooding back into the bay, water tumbling over itself as if in a hurry to cover the miles of mudflats it left behind. Boats lift up, wobbling wildly in the enormous surge of water, tossed around like rubber ducks in a tub. One of those boats belongs to my father. Is he on it or is he ashore? Will he survive? How about Mom? Is she a safe distance from the rising water? From our place on the hill, we can just make out a few of the homes along the shore. A moment later, the houses vanish under a wall of water. The wild sea keeps coming, devouring the land, destroying everything in its path. "We're not high enough!" I scream. Jess nods sharply. "Into the woods!" We race into the pine forest. The trees are tall and imposing and impossible to climb because the branches start way over our heads. The rushing water gets louder and louder, like the watery howl of a creature intent on burying us beneath the water. We race deeper into the pine forest. My feet slip on the dried pine needles underfoot, but I catch myself before I go down. Can't fall, can't stop running. Ahead of us, a tall, uprooted tree looms, dust and sandy dirt still falling from the massive root ball. Toppled by the earthquake, it crashes into the surrounding trees, which kept it from falling all the way to the ground. It leans half over like a wounded soldier, depending on the help of friends, its uppermost branches at least 50 feet from the ground. Jess looks at me, her eyes huge. No point shouting over the thunderous rush of water behind us, but she points at the fallen tree. She's right. The massive uprooted tree is our only option. Jess goes first, finding her grip on the tree trunk as she scuttles up it. I'm right behind, heart in my mouth, not daring to look down or back. "Nick!" Jess is pointing behind us. She looks scared to death. I see what has her so terrified, the mad wave coming for us, swallowing everything in its path. The ground we were standing on moments ago is now under rushing, boiling waters. The tree we were climbing is suddenly vibrating with the force of rushing water. "Higher!" I scream, my voice swallowed by the roar of the flood. We inch higher, holding onto the tree trunk with all our might. Did I mention I'm scared of heights? Turns out I'm more scared of the wave. Stay where we are and we'll be consumed by the rising water. Higher we go, Jess Hardy leading the way, urging me on. We get to where the fallen tree meets the branches of the surrounding pines and are finally able to place our feet securely on the branches. We cling to our new perch, 50 or so feet above what used to be the ground. Will it hold or be swept away? Will we survive, or are these the last few minutes of my very short life? Above us, hidden among the pine branches, something moans. A terrified, escaped bobcat, eyes glowing yellow, hanging for dear life. The moans become shrieks as our tree begins to shake and shudder from the force of the waves sweeping through on all sides. Far below us, the trunk of our new perch suddenly snaps. The tree begins to fall, with us still clinging to the branches. Me, Jess Hardy, and a crazed bobcat, we're about to crash into the deadly water. Chapter 4, Time to Die. Our tree crashes into a tangled pile of broken pines and comes to a jarring stop just above the rushing water. We're still hanging desperately to the branch, both of us screaming, along with the terrified bobcat. The fast-moving floodwaters are close enough to splash us. The retreating wave is rushing back to sea, wreaking havoc as it goes. They say if you're about to die, your life flashes before your eyes. Maybe for some, but not for me. The only thing flashing before my eyes are the retreating floodwaters, raging through the sandy soil of the pine woods, sucking it away. The landscape is being destroyed. All around us, tall pines crash as they are uprooted, torn from the soil. The noise is ear-splitting, as if the trees themselves are shrieking in terror. The tree we're clinging to tips abruptly, pushing us even closer to the rushing waters. "Hang on!" Jess screams. Her face is twisted in terror, her eyes as big as saucers. We both know that this could be it. The tree plunges into the rushing water. It's all I can do to keep my head out of the water. I gulp air while I still have the chance. When I got up this morning, I assumed it would be just another Saturday. Do the podcast homework assignment, maybe hang with my friends in the afternoon playing Minecraft. Pizza for supper if I'm lucky, and then watch some shows with Mom. Just, an ordinary day. Not an end of the world as you know it day. Suddenly the water surges over my head. It's dark and terrifying, and I no longer know which way is up. I've always been afraid of opening my eyes underwater, but there's no choice. Don't think about it, Nick, just do it. I can't really see anything. The water's so gritty with sand and my glasses are totally blurry. Struggling with all my might, I lift my head toward the dim light and somehow manage to keep my grip on the tree trunk. I manage to pull myself up until my head clears the surface and I'm able to breathe. Ah! I'm gasping for air, trying to get my bearings. "Help!" Jess screams. I spot her, her head barely out of the water. She's not far from me. I struggle to get closer without letting go. Jess must have been pinned against the branches as the tree rolled and can't get loose. Hanging on with my right arm, I use my left to grab her shirt collar and I yank. She comes free and scrambles up the tree to where she's clear of the water, then extends a hand and helps me up to join her. "Thanks," I say. "No problem. You saved my life." "Oh, you'd have been okay." "Seriously? Dude, I was about to be dragged under." It's too big to think about, that I might have saved someone's life. Another item not in my playbook for a typical Saturday. "What happened to the bobcat?" Jess asks, looking around. "No idea. She must have taken off while I was under. Can bobcats swim?" Jess pushes her wet hair out of her face. "All cats can swim if they have to." "Good to know," I say. My racing heart slowly returns to something like normal. We may be in the middle of a ruined forest with broken trees piled high above us, but the retreating floodwaters have slowed somewhat, and that's reassuring. For the first time since the earthquake struck, I feel relatively safe. "Nick, something's happening." The tree we are perched is creaking, then shrieking as it tears free, propelled by one last surge of retreating water. You want to read on? Yeah, I know. We got to find out what happens. Chapter 5, Buried Alive. Pushed by a wall of retreating floodwater, our tree is like a giant out-of-control surfboard. I try to shield my head, and then decide it's more important to hang on. Crashing through the devastated pine woods, plunging and rising, narrowly missing the sharp ends of broken trees. I'm not sure how long this wild ride lasts, but it can't be more than 10 seconds or so. The water beneath us finally vanishes, drawn back out to sea. Our tree settles heavily onto a mass of broken branches. Ruined pines are tangled high above us, nearly blocking out the daylight. We're maybe 5 feet above the sandy soil, buried under a landslide of uprooted pine trees. Squinting up into the mass above, it looks to be at least 100 feet of wrecked forest blocking out all but a glimpse of the sky. I look over at Jess. She's soaked from head to foot, her hair knotted with pine needles. I reach up to touch my own hair. Tons of pine needles. We both look like we've been locked in a washing machine on the heavy-duty cycle. I grin and shake my head in disbelief. "We made it!" Jess starts to giggle with relief. That makes me giggle. A moment later, we erupt into a full-scale, rock-your-body giggle mania, the kind that leaves you breathless, laughing at the relief of surviving. Wow, that was weird, Jess says when our laughter subsides, puzzled by her own reaction. I mean, I thought I was going to die. What's funny about that? I shrug. Maybe this is what they mean by laughing in the face of death. I guess. My thoughts return to Mom and Dad. Please, God, let them survive. I'll be good, I promise. Keep my room clean, always do my homework, and never, ever complain about anything ever again. I promise to always be grateful that we made it, all three of us. If we did. If we do. I glance over at Jess, who looks thoughtful and concerned, no doubt worrying about her own family. We both need something nice to revive our spirits, and I've got just the thing. Can you help me get this backpack off? I ask. I balance my feet on the tree just below us and hang on to our perch with one hand. Jess sidles over carefully and helps me slip the pack off. Amazingly, the straps held. Inside, to my great relief, are my tuna sandwich and 2 bottles of water. The backpack is soaked through, but the plastic lunch container kept the sandwich dry. I hand Jess one of the water bottles. You're sharing? Well, of course. Half a tuna sandwich? She looks at it hungrily but shakes her head. Oh, that's your lunch. I insist. We need to keep our strength up. No way of knowing when the next meal might come along. You're sure? I hand her the half sandwich. We both eat like we're starving. I finish mine in about 3 gulps. The very next thought that enters my head is phone. I search my clothing and come up with nothing. The phone must have been sucked right out of my front pocket, which is where I usually put it. I checked all the zippered compartments on the backpack just to be sure, but the phone is gone. Not that I expect calls are getting through. Surely cell coverage is still disrupted, but it has to come back at some point. Jess, watching my frantic search, says, Mine is in my locker along with my pack. That was the rule for the docents. Wow, that's bad. It means we have no chance of contacting the outside world. I shake my head and sigh. We're on our own. I doubt anyone saw us head for the pine woods. It was chaos, everybody out for themselves. Jess nods thoughtfully. We need a plan, Nick. How do we get out of here without hurting ourselves plan? Creak, creak, creak. Above us, the layer of broken pines is making creaking noises. Settling, I hope. Crack! A tree splinters, plummeting farther into the tangled wreckage. Other trees splinter along the way, setting off a chain reaction, heading our way. We're being buried alive. Chapter 6, A Sky Full of Trees. Hang on, Jess screams, hugging our tree as it shifts. A moment later, we're smothered in pine branches. I was sure that collapsing pines would smash into us, but it seems like the mass of broken branches actually protected us. My nose tickles from a fistful of pine needles shaken loose by the falling branches. Jess suggested hanging on, but for me, that's not a problem. The tree we clung to has rolled, pinning my legs. I can't move. Jess, I'm kind of stuck. Her eyes widen in concern. How bad? Well, it doesn't hurt, so there can't be anything broken, right? She thinks about it. I broke my arm when I was 8, hit the curb on my bike and went flying. It hurt like crazy. No pain, no break. Good. Jess carefully disentangles herself from the broken branches, brushing pine needles out of her hair. Nick, you need to stay as still as possible. If the trunk moves again, it might make things worse. I was going to try wriggling, maybe slip out. She shakes her head, looking dead serious. Don't move. No wriggling, no squirming, nothing. I've got a plan. What's the plan? She frowns. Just please keep still, and I'll show you. First, I have to find the right branch. The thing is, the sky above us is so full of broken pine trees that the light is pretty dim. The sandy soil just below is soaking wet, and Jess's feet get sucked down. She loses a shoe, and it takes a while to dig it out of the mud and put it back on. Sorry, she says. I've no idea why she's apologizing. I'm the idiot stuck under the tree. Take your time, I encourage her. I'm not going anywhere. Don't move, she urges, concerned, apparently, that the tree might shift again and crush me. Amazing. Before this morning, I'd never spoken to Jess Hardy, and now we're saving each other's lives. Waiting for Jess to find whatever kind of branch she's searching for, my brain goes back to those first few moments when the water in the bay vanished. Was my dad on the boat in the bay? Or did he have a charter? What if he was miles offshore when the wave struck? Would that mean he was safe? Thing is, the last time I saw him, I got mad and said stuff. Bad stuff I need to put right. And what about my mom out grocery shopping for the week? Did she have a chance to get to her car and run for it? The grocery store isn't near the water, but it isn't really on high ground either. My brain won't let me think that I might be an orphan. Jess interrupts my thoughts. This is going to work, she says. I can't help wondering if her sounding confident is for my sake. Jess hefts a thick, straight chunk of pine branch, pushing the end under the trunk that has me pinned. Ready? Count of 3. On 3, you try to get loose. Grasping with both hands, she heaves upward, pushing with her legs. 1, 2. Jess surges, fierce and determined, grunting like a weightlifter and shaking with the effort. 3. The weight on me lifts, and I slip out from under the tree trunk. A moment later, her knees buckle, and the trunk comes crashing down, narrowly missing both of us. Jess sits slumped on the wet ground, huffing to get her breath back. That was amazing, I tell her. You've got like superpowers or something. She laughs, hitting my arm lightly with her fist. I wish. If I did, we'd be flying out of here. The truth is, we're going to have to find our way through this wreckage, maybe for miles. High above us, the sky brightens with a flash. A moment later, we hear the rumble of thunder, and then it begins to rain, pouring down through the pine needles to drench us. Perfect. I'm going to skip ahead a couple of chapters before I get to our cliffhanger, so I can end on a cliffhanger to make you want to read more and come get the book. So we're going to move ahead a couple chapters. They're trying to make their way through these pine branches everywhere, and it's very hard to get through them, and they're struggling and struggling to get through. But then, in chapter 9, everything changes. Mom says I was a late walker, 15 months old before I took my first steps. Mom says that's because I was so good at crawling. The weird thing is I did it backwards, scooting around butt first. Mom thinks it was funny and cute, but I always thought it was one more reason to be embarrassed. I couldn't even get crawling right. I'm making up for it now, big time. Can't make any progress standing up. Too many broken trees and branches. The only way is to crawl underneath, in the sandy mud left by the wave, branches scratching our backs. Wet and tired and slower than the slowest snail. Progress is in hard-fought inches. Worst of all, there's no way to know if we're crawling in a straight line or circling back on ourselves. I've never been so miserable. Until now, gym class is what made me miserable. The other kids made fun of me because I can't even manage one pull-up. And I'm usually dead last if we're running around the track. Hate it, hate it, hate it. But I'd give anything to be safe and miserable in gym class. Gym only lasts 40 minutes and we've been crawling for hours. At first, Jess keeps encouraging me. You're a champ, Nick. Don't give up. You're doing great. Like that. Not for a while now, as if shouting encouragement is too exhausting. Like she's saving her strength to fight the mud and the trees. Crawl for long enough and you start to feel like a human worm, barely capable of thought. Your brain says keep going, but your body wants to give up. It's really, really tempting to lie down and wait to be rescued. I try it, just for a moment, cheek first in the damp mud. I start to nod off, thinking about how my teachers say I lose focus. If that's the same as losing interest, they're right. Like, I've lost interest in crawling and staying awake. No way, Jess shouts, giving my foot a shove. Keep moving or we won't survive. We'll die of exposure. What's that? I say weakly. She's panting, finding the strength to explain. body temperature. If it drops too far, your organs start to fail. It can happen even on a warm day. The damp mud will suck the warmth from your body. We have to keep moving, Nick. I've got plans. Plans? For my life. I'm going to make the honor roll in high school and get a scholarship to veterinary school. After college, of course. I want to be a big animal vet. Horses, cows, sheep. Oh, that's great. What about you? What do you want to be? Asleep. No, she shoves my foot hard enough so it hurts. Hey, leave me alone. Go ahead, I'll catch up. No way, I'm serious. Move your butt, Nick. I don't want to have to tell your parents their son gave up. I'm not. I'm just tired. Me too, I get it. But we have to keep going. If we fall asleep in the cold mud, we might never wake up. She's right. I know that in my soul. Gathering up what strength remains, I crawl forward, pushing through branches. That's it. Keep going. You're doing great. Then, out of nowhere, everything changes in an instant. Wah, wah. I know that sound. That's the blast of an air horn echoing through the ruined forest. Jess starts screaming at the top of her lungs. Help! Help! We're alive! Help us! Wah, wah, wah. The horn sounds in response. They heard us! We're about to be rescued! Not exactly. Nick and Jess hurry as fast as they can through this debris and find a boat with a couple on board. And it turns out they can't rescue Nick and Jess. They are the ones who need rescuing. So it's going to be up to Jess and Nick to make their way through all of this pine forest debris and find help. And time is running out. So it's up to Jess and Nick to save the couple. I wonder what happened to the bobcat. I wonder if he'll show up again. I always worry about those little details when I read a book. Well, that's our cliffhanger. And so if you want to find out what happens to Jess and Nick, and if they rescue this couple in time, you can read Wild Wave by Rodman Philbrick. And I believe he's written some other adventure series because they have similar titles. One's called Wild River and the other one is called Wildfire. Two other exciting ones. If they're written like this one that just jump into the action, they're going to be good. So I hope you like this one. Give it a try. Thanks for joining me today on Chapter Book Storytime. That's it for today, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.